Yeah, you. Welcome back to this new episode of Let's Talk Common Sense with me, Mike Omni. It's a joy to have you back. Listen, our numbers keep going up, and I think it's because you are sharing this podcast. So thank you for clicking on, and thank you for sharing it. If you haven't listened to last episode, do so, because it was actually quite interesting. But my name's Mike, and we've got some interesting things to share with you today. Whether you're on your way to work or having lunch or even dinner, whatever it is, we've got something interesting for you to think about, discuss with your friend. I've got a great guest as always to also discuss these things with. Cannot wait for you guys to meet him. If you haven't done so yet, do follow LTCS Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. That's the new podcast home, I guess. So if you want to get some behind the scenes look, see where we're recording from. We're recording today from Manchester. So we are in, I don't want to say, it's not really sunny, is it?
It's just not rainy.
Yeah, not rainy Manchester. And so thank you for joining us wherever you're joining us from around the world. Now, this week has been an interesting week, folks. For news, has been very interesting. Of course, we've got to start with a soundbite I heard this morning from none other than the presidential hopeful Kanye West. He said a lot of things, which I don't want to go into, but here's one of the things he said.
So that's a Stephen move. When Harriet Tubman never actually freed the slaves. She just had the slaves go work for other white people.
Y'all, we leaving right now.
Couple of things to dissect there. This is Kanye West at a rally, I believe, in South Carolina, where he is, getting the troops rallied up because he's about to, pick up speed, if you like, for his campaign. And he gives this bizarre speech, which ends almost with him saying that Harriet Tubman didn't actually free slaves, but she led the slaves to new white masters. And obviously you can see groans there from the public just going, what on earth is he on about? Well, I want to get into this in a minute, but before we do that, let's just meet Torrin. So Torrin is our guest today. Torrin works at the Common Sense Network, but also is a creative in his own right. He runs a company called
BBT Productions.
Is it TP Productions?
DBT Productions.
DBT Productions. Before we just dissect Kanye West, you're creative yourself, right? Mm-hmm. What do you make of this?
It's quite interesting, because artists in general, they have a very different perspective on life, especially Kanye West. I think the way he's so intense with his music and his, creative outlook on life, I think it's a very interesting formula. Now he's trying to become the president, but I think especially with the current, situation, anyone could become a president. Look at Donald Trump. So it's like... there's nothing really wrong with that, but it's kind of the way that it's developed into look who's running for it now is very interesting. It's interesting to see where the world's going to go with that.
I still don't. Oh, gosh. Sometimes I wake up, I don't know what to say, because I asked you off air, I just said, why is he doing this? Because I wake up sometimes and I don't want to be all dramatic, but I wake up and I'm like, what is going on with the world?
Yeah.
And I never thought I would sound, but I feel like I sound like my dad or like just an uncle. Like, what does the world become? But honestly, in what world is Kanye West running for president? But also, why does he keep saying stupid things? You'll remember, listeners, that Kanye, this is the same Kanye who at the BuzzFeed office, at TMZ offices last year, I believe, said that slavery was a choice. Mm-hmm. And then he was like, "Oh yeah, I've got like a mental condition, something like that." And it was which, albeit might be true, but why does he keep saying crazy things? And as you kind of said, is this an attempt for him to take the black vote away somewhat from Joe Biden, who we know would have, got a lot of the black vote, thereby making the path to the presidency easier for someone like Donald Trump? Mm-hmm. What do you make of that?
I'm torn because a part of me feels like he's genuinely trying to do this. Like he said from 4 years ago that he was gonna do it. So it's kind of like he's saying he's following his word, but it's kind of I do believe that he believes he's got something to offer in that sense. Like he speaks from a person of, you know, leadership in the culture, and he's a very opinionated.
Is he a leader in the culture?
To be fair, I do believe he is, purely based on the fact that I feel like we choose who that is. We choose who the leaders are, and I think, you know, a lot of the black community, a lot of the music community, he is very much a leader in that culture and stuff. And I think the way that he's utilized like social media and his like outspoken opinions and all that sort of stuff has led him to become a person where people actually kind of listen to certain stuff he says, but nowadays it's kind of just getting more wacky. It's kind of just,
I mean, it's quite interesting because he calls himself a mad genius, and Donald Trump, you remember, calls himself a stable genius. So they have something in common. They're both narcissists. But you know, away from that, if we come home a little bit, some sad news this today. M&S have reported that they're going to be cutting hundreds of jobs following just struggling sales and you know, like we didn't see this coming. But essentially, they will be joining a host of other retailers. I think including in this list is John Lewis and Partners, Boots, Debenhams. All of them reporting that they're going to be cutting hundreds of jobs in, you know, as they restructure to try and survive following the coronavirus pandemic. So I think this unemployment figure that everyone's been kind of having a go at is going to be high, the highest we've seen in at least 70 years. And I think it's going to be very interesting how Rishi Sunak attempts to combat this. You'll remember that he released a £30 billion mini budget just 2 weeks ago now, explaining how he planned to save retailing jobs and things of that nature. But a lot of retailers on the high street are at risk. And listen, if big retailers like Marks and Spencer's are saying that jobs will be cut, how much more your small independent retailers? I mean, will they survive? Will our high streets look the same? No one knows. But we certainly know that we're in for a bumpy ride, so everyone should hold on to their seats. Now, the topic today, and why I think it's so good to have you on, Torrin, is about ethical consuming or ethical consumption. Now, following the Black Lives Matter movements and the global protests we saw, a lot of companies were quick to make Instagram posts, you'll remember, to say that we stand in solidarity with black people and so on and so forth. And one of the things that thought leaders were also saying is, if we're going to see systemic change and long-term change, then we need everyone to commit to changing the way they consume things, the way they do things. Businesses have to systematically change, but also consumers have to change as well. So this idea of ethical consumption is something that's always been interesting. It was brought to my attention by vegans, and anyone who knows me and vegans don't get along. The vegans are just far too religious for my liking. You know, everybody must be a vegan. No thanks. In fact, I follow one guy on Instagram who posts like crazy stuff about veganism. In fact, when Black Lives Matter happened, he posted an image like, it's all connected, guys. We're killing animals and we're killing black people. And I said, no. That's the wrong time to make that kind of post, right? But he's always been talking about voting with our pound sign or voting with our dollar. Now, to give you a bit more understanding about ethical consumption, essentially it's about making the connections between a product, where you think that product originated from, and what context or in what context was that product produced. Before you shop, the idea is that you have to consider how your shopping habits affects the lifestyles of other people, the community, and the wider environment. So as an ethically informed consumer, you're not just buying something, you are pushing forward a certain narrative, or you're trying to recreate the world in one specific way or the other. So, Torrin, on a very top level, before we get more granular, what are your thoughts on ethical consumption?
It's a great idea. You know what I mean? It seems like it's, pushed to kind of make the world a better place. Make sure that everything's done right, done safe, and for the betterment of other people. Is it something that I can see being very strong? I'm not too sure, but that's to kind of just see how it goes. I think the situation that's happened in terms of like the protests and even with coronavirus and the way that the shopping landscape is changing, I think it's going to leave more opportunity for that to happen now. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of grows and evolves into a thing.
Okay, so let's get into it then, because one of the reasons folks are saying ethical consumption is going to be what helps the black community particularly, but also just makes the world a better place, is that we can vote with our dollar. We can actually support the kind of businesses we think ought to be supported, and businesses that that deal with the racism properly, businesses that put black people, businesses where black people aren't an afterthought. So these are businesses where black people aren't an afterthought. Minorities are front and center of the business operation. The idea is that we support them, and then they flourish, they do well, and other businesses, I guess, don't. In fact, I was added just a few weeks ago now to a black-owned business Facebook. It's called the Black Economy. Now, I think it's actually a private group, so I may have just outed them without knowing. But ultimately, this is 140,000 odd businesses, all trading secrets and stuff like that. And I looked and I thought, this is really, really cool. I mean, what do you make about stuff like that?
Yeah, I think overall it's very beneficial and it's very positive. But I think in a system where black businesses and black people in general aren't front and center, or in a place where they in a position to necessarily succeed, I think it is going to take a lot of active people coming together and being like, okay, look, we're going to force ourselves into the door in this way. And I think this is what's kind of being done. And I think the only way that we're going to get to that point is by everyone unifying in that sense, especially black people coming together and doing it in that way. Yeah.
So did you buy black then?
Yeah. I bought into a few businesses, like my sister's hairline. She does black hair and beauty stuff, so I bought a few products of that. It's supposed to be happening every month now, isn't it? Or...
No clue. But do you think this is my thing? Is that enough? Because a part of it feels a bit tokenistic. I get the impulse. You're exposing people to businesses they didn't even think existed before, which can be the start, I guess, of ethical consumption trends. But more generally, how is one day or one day a month of sending a black business 20 quid, essentially, how's that going to keep them afloat or help them raise the relevant capital they need to expand, to grow, to really do their thing?
I don't necessarily think it will. The way that I see it is kind of similar to, the Blackout Tuesday. I see it very similar to that movement that happened. It was a thing where, I feel like a lot of people just jumped on it because it was happening at the time. And as much as, it was a thing, people might not have done it with the intention to actually, because they cared about the cause or anything like that. It was more to do with, okay, this is what's happening on social media. And I think this the Black Pound Day thing is very much almost similar in that sense, because I think it is going to be a thing where a lot of people just kind of post about black business because it's that day or whatever. And as much as that might not necessarily be right because it's not the right intentions, I still see that it can have a benefit in the sense that there's impact, and people are getting an audience, and it's showing it's like free promotions or free advertisements for the black business.
Did you feel like you had to do it?
To some degree, yeah. But obviously, I'm okay with that because I'm black. You know what I mean? But
no way. Yeah.
But it's not. It doesn't feel. I would only say like, I can see it from the perspective of someone who doesn't care, if that sense, who I can see that they're like, oh, I've got to do this. And, as much as it shouldn't be that way, but I can see how social media and stuff, enforces that feeling on someone. And to be fair as well, like with Black Pound Day, it's a thing where, you can't really tell whether a person's actually done anything about it. They can say they've done it, but how can you even really necessarily see whether a person's done it? So they can be posting on social media and all this sort of stuff, but what are we gonna do to kind of see how effective it actually is?
I think what's so important to do is, I often speak about how the way we combat anything systemic is going to take a multivariate approach. You're going to need to have people buy in your sister's hair care products and stuff like that. But you're also going to need to have some really serious conversations about the access to capital that black businesses have, the failure rate of black businesses, especially in the first 6 to 12 months, all the structural issues at play. I think a day where we send money, essentially, because that's what it is. We're buying some black products. One day a month. I'm sorry, my brother. We need consistent consumption of black products. That's the only way you're going to build business. In fact, it's actually worse for my balance book if on one day a month I just get a spike in sales. I can't plan for that. I can't use that really. What I need is sustained growth over time. That's how businesses thrive. You cannot thrive if on the 2nd of November you just randomly get a spike in sales.
I feel with that as well. Like a lot of. The reason that I was kind of, torn about the whole situation is because I feel like it's a way for a lot of people to feel like they're getting away with sort of stuff, and it's not helping people to address the problem, because it's almost a sense of validation. Once you give away to that, it's like, okay, I've done my good deed for the system. You know what I mean? And it's the same way about things like Black History Month and all this sort of stuff. Yes, it brings awareness. Yes, it helps a lot of things, but it almost kind of doesn't fix the problem long term. It's kind of just a day or a month or a week, and then we're back to the same old stuff. You know what I mean? And I think that's the issue here. It's how do we make this a mindset rather than just a special occasion? I think.
I mean, you're so right. We don't want it to be a special occasion, and to broaden it out a bit, some of these big issues like climate change, sweatshop labor abuse, animal abuse, these have been hot button issues in North America since the 1990s, pretty much. And you'll remember, and we all know this because it's happened over and over again, this is how we saw the emergence of fair trade. We saw all these stories that showed us that billion-dollar corporations like Apple, Nike, Nestle, Walmart were all forcing workers to manufacture products in sweatshops. And when we found that out, people were rightly outraged and said, hold on a minute, what are the working conditions of these places in these third world countries? I put that in quotation marks. And that's really, I think, where the ethical consumption train took off. I remember being a young child being told that fair trade is good. It's better than the other stuff because that way people are being paid a fair amount. So we started seeing, stuff like terms like ethical consumption being brought up. This idea that you vote with your dollar. Some people went as far as to say ethical consumption is actually compassionate capitalism. It's capitalism, or what they might call benevolent capitalism. So we were told to buy stuff that's eco-friendly, that's organic, that's sustainable. But what's interesting to me, though, is even though we saw this movement begin in the 1990s, if we take a look, well, I say it began there, but that's where it really grew speed. If we take a look at the world now, and look at the impact of this conscious capitalism, which is where we can get a bit more granular. I'm not sure if things have really changed. So if we pause at 2018, because a recent report I read paused there. So people have gone green, they've gone vegan, they've shopped fair trade, and they've been recycling for years now. But all these atrocities that actually spurred on the ethical consumption movement are still going on right now. So the working class, according to the Huffington Post, they produce enough food now for 2 worlds.
Serious.
Right? But there's still millions of children that die of malnutrition every single year. In fact, 20,000 children a day die from malnutrition. All these big companies that branded themselves as compassionate capitalists that put forward the fair trade products. As of 2018, again, a report found that of all their profits, they only donated 1.08% towards alleviating poverty and hunger. That is not a significant effect. 3 billion people still live in worldwide poverty. 5 people own as much wealth. I sound like Bernie Sanders now. 5 people own as much wealth as 50% of the world's population. We know that human-caused climate change is at catastrophic levels right now, with many scientists warning that we have something like 20 years until we reach the point of no return. I mean, I could carry on. There's so many statistics that show us that the world is totally warped. And a part of me just thinks, what difference does me go into Asda and picking one product. What difference does that actually make, right? A 2012 study by the Corvinus, I think, University in Budapest, found that there is no significant difference between the carbon footprints of people who consume ethically and those that do not. The argument always given is, it's like going to an earthquake and with a brush and a dustpan and going, well, where can I help out? What do you think about when you read all these massive statistics that show you just how broken the world is? How does my ethical consumption solve that?
That's
a big question.
That's a tough question. You're asking me how to change the world.
Torrin, how do we change the world?
How do we fix everything?
Welcome to the Lesson Conversation.
I think there's a lot to unpack there. I'm
gonna unpack it.
Yeah. I think when you really break it down, I think, it's down to human behavior. And like I was very much I was interested in like psychology and all this sort of stuff, and I'm very interested in looking at patterns and how people behave and all that sort of stuff. And I think we humans, we just like convenience. We like doing as much little as we can to kind of get by. And I think as much as it was weird, because even when you were reading off all them statistics, it felt new to me. It felt like I didn't know any of that. It felt like, okay, I didn't realize it was that messed up. And I think a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't even realize. And I think, because when we're just living our lives, we don't really think about those sort of things. Humans are selfish. We think about what we need, what, makes our life go around and all of that sort of stuff. And I think, even if people had the knowledge of all that sort of stuff, if it doesn't affect them, why would they change? You know what I mean? In that sense. So it's not, I don't even necessarily know if the answer is what can we do, because it's a thing where it's like our human nature actually needs to completely change. And can that be done at this point where we've just lived the way that we've lived for so long? Like, after we've caused this much damage, how do we go back on all of that? Is there even a chance to go back and fix it, or that sort of stuff? But saying that, I think that doesn't necessarily think we should kind of just have this it's over, let's just give up type of mentality. And I think by you doing those sort of things, I don't necessarily think it might, you doing that is going to change everything, but it's not even necessarily for us. It could be for the next generation of people that's coming along. Like,
what about people who can't? So, people speak about making environmentally friendly decisions, but due to systemic economic and social inequality, some people actually can't afford to pay the higher premium that typically fair trade or organic products demand. So what about them?
I guess we can't really, say that they're wrong for not doing it, because it comes down to everyone's, position in life and where they are. I think we need to not think about necessarily other people, and we need to really think about, okay, what are we doing? What am I doing? What, rather than saying, oh, but this person isn't doing this, because that's when we start pointing the finger in that sense, it kind of gives, again, it's this sense of validation that, okay, I don't need to do it. But, I think with us doing it, and the people that are able to do sort of stuff in that position, it will make some degree of a change to where mentally people will start to see, okay, maybe I should start doing this, maybe I should think about buying this product here or doing this here. Will it make a change straight away? No, not necessarily, but it will lead us to a place where hopefully, if everything's more economical and everything like that, then eventually more money will just be going in, and if it becomes more ethical, then eventually these economically derelict places, they will start to get more money coming in, and they can get to a position where they are doing the same thing as us, if that makes sense.
I got you. I mean, I think that's fair. I'm part of a few networking groups, and as based on the work I do, God knows how many different conversations I've had with corporates in rooms where they're talking about the global goals, the UN's global goals, and then poverty and education and climate change and stuff like that. And the impulse in the room is never to change people's individual behavior, because the time lag effect, we just don't have the time for it. We don't have the time for everyone to wait. Sorry, we don't have the time for everyone to have an epiphany and go, I should shop. There's no time. So we need these corporates to move pretty quickly. However, I guess For those who may be listening now, and by the way, folks, if any of this resonates with you or is interesting to you, feel free to contact us, LTCS Podcast. Share with me what you think about ethical consumption. But also, feel free to join the conversation online using the hashtag LTCS. I would love to know what you think about all these different topics. Some people listening to me will be those who don't believe in capitalism as a structure, full stop. They think ethical consumption is an illusion, where we're told that profit for the most moral is okay. And so profit in and of itself implies like misuse in some regard, they would say. So they would say it's an oxymoron. Ethical profit is an oxymoron because ultimately you're dividing the working class up. And I know this is a very Marxist lens. There's probably people who are like, is this guy a Marxist? I'm not. But I'm presenting the arguments because I think it's something worth considering. Now you have people who say stuff like, well, we want profit through purpose. And that sounds like a more benevolent thing to say, but ultimately it's still profit.
It's the same thing,
and it's still using a certain class of people to achieve that profit. So perhaps what we've got to do, and what I'm really saying is, maybe we need to start reimagining new structures. Maybe one of the things that George Floyd's death can also achieve, as much as waking us up and really spurring on these protests for justice, maybe one of the things they can also do is get young people reimagining a new system. Now, I'm not suggesting death to the capitalism and tear it all down, but the answer can't just be to pay a bit more when I go to Asda, because as we're saying, it's just a luxury for some people. I can't do that. I mean, you're someone who shops. You're wearing Puma. I mean, that's an interesting brand in and of itself. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, when you go into the shop, and again, I would love to hear people who are listening's thoughts. Do you look around and check the back of the product to see how it's been sourced, and do you research into Puma and see what's actually happened, or do you just go, that looks sick, I'm buying it?
Honestly, I really don't. I really don't.
You don't? Which one?
I don't go in and, look and analyze and research. And again, it's because of convenience, you know what I mean? Like, especially as a young guy as well, it's kind of just like, okay, like, let me just get this, let me just get that, you know what I mean? especially sort of name brands and stuff like that, it is a thing where you don't really expect that sort of history or anything negative to come from it. Like, look at everyone having an iPhone and then realizing, oh, it's made in little factories, you know what I mean? It's sort of that sort of mentality, and even with the knowledge, people still don't really change because, again, it's convenient in that sort of sense. And I think, it is difficult to kind of completely change that. And I think, I don't know what it's gonna take to do that. And I think with that, I could go and start doing that, but then it's like, again, with the profit stuff, is it really making a change? And as much as I understand the benefit of what it can cause, like, will it, should we completely change our, perspective on lives and all this sort of stuff in that sense in order to do that, when, again, you said it might not necessarily even make a huge impact?
Torrin, good morning. I don't know, and I don't think I have to know. I mean, my desire and our desire with this is to talk about difficult things and to have people thinking. What's important, again, to stress is that I am in no way advocating a Marxist lens at approaching the world, but these are things we should think about. How do we rethink, reinvent, question the normal way of doing things? And ascertain whether it's the way we ought to continue. Some will say, no, benevolent capitalism does work. Capitalism rewards hard work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the idea that change or systemic change will, we can fix in with a one-time effort is just wrong. If it takes generations to build systems, it's going to take generations to tear them down. It's going to take generations to rebuild new systems. And systems change is something I've been interested in for a while. Dominant curves and innovation curves and stuff like that. And maybe on another podcast we can go in depth with how the three horizons or systems change works. But I read a lot of articles about what's going to happen next and time, and the economists, they all have their different journalists have their different prescriptions as this is what's going to take to change things. And every time I read one of them, I just kind of rub my small beard for a bit, and I just go, I don't know. I don't know, and perhaps that's okay, because we are in an unprecedented time. So if anyone's listening, going, I have no clue, then join the club. It's okay. Now, to change gears a bit, we play a game at the end, so that should brighten things up a bit, because it just was a very somber podcast, right? But hey, a very important one. This game. So last week we played Change My Mind, where I say a statement and then you have a minute to change my mind about that statement.
All right.
Right. The guest didn't really change my mind, but we will try with yourself. How are you feeling?
It's gonna be interesting.
Are you a persuasive person?
It depends what it is. It depends if it's something that I can really sort of dive into. But you're pretty opinionated, so it's gonna be interesting.
No. Opinion? No, I'm just here to have my mind changed. So I'm gonna say one statement out, and you need to change my mind in a minute. The first statement is: basketball is the greatest sport of all time.
So you want me to change your mind and say it's not?
Yeah.
See, now I'm gonna have to play devil's advocate on this one. Okay.
Your time starts.
Okay.
Now.
So basketball. It's great. It is an amazing sport. You know, we see legends like Michael Jordan, LeBron James himself playing the ball, but we only really see it in sort of America and all these sort of places. But culturally, growing up in the UK, think about, you know, the chants that you hear on the streets, your face, the chants you hear on the streets, you know, the community and the bonding between, you know, footballers, and, you know, just the almost patriotic feel you get from watching football. You think about the World Cup. You did not see the way that England came together. Even Drake himself said, "Come on, England." So if Drake himself, you know, felt the need to talk about football in that sense, you not think that football maybe, just maybe, if you just opened up your eyes just a little bit to see, football might be the greatest.
Time up! Oh gosh, that was painful.
It was painful for me.
How did you find that?
I was chatting a load of nonsense.
Did you change my mind?
Come on, England.
I think basketball is one of the greatest team sports of all time, by far. There's no sport where everyone attacks, everyone defends. I think it's the old. My brother-in-law, we actually go back and forth on this. He thinks American football is the greatest team sport of all time. I think it's basketball. But I don't think you changed my mind with that one. It was a bit of a weak one. I'll be honest with you. I was kind of watching going. So here's one more for you then, because I know you're proper into like your popular culture and stuff, and you just mentioned Drake there, right? So should we do one about Drake?
Okay.
Are you a big fan of Drake?
Yeah. I like his stuff.
Who'd you say is your favorite kind of artist or rapper or something like that?
Probably J. Cole.
J. Cole.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me do one about J. Cole then.
Okay.
Right. So you have to change my mind about this. J. Cole is the most conscious rapper since Tupac. Change my mind.
Okay. Okay. So with that, that's a hard one. That is a hard one. With that, it's hard to say that J. Cole, just him, he is the most conscious rapper. We've got Kendrick, we've got Drake, we got Drake in the sense that, what at this point, what even do you mean by conscious? We've got, as I said, okay, let's go with Drake. We've got him. He's very conscious in, relationships and feelings and emotions and what it's like to be a man that's kind of, struggling with a relationship and all this sort of stuff. We've got Joey Badass, where he likes to talk a lot about, systematic oppression and all this sort of stuff. J. Cole, he very much does talk about it, but I do believe sometimes he does only scratch the surface. With if you look at, Childish Gambino, a lot of his recent tracks is literally going straight, staring in the face at this is America. This is what we're going through. And again, with Joey Badass, a whole album that he dedicated to, the oppression of America. And all
Time's up.
was hard. That one was really hard.
Well, you didn't actually convince me of anything. You just kind of said other rappers.
I was trying to go the route of, he is one, but there are others that might, be more bait about it. It's because I agree with you, so it's hard for me to.
I know. This is the whole point of the Commentators Network. You have to.
That's hard.
Try and understand other people's perspective. Well, unfortunately, you didn't convince me there as well.
Do you reckon you can do it?
I think I can. No, let me try one. You have to say a phrase, and I have to convince you otherwise.
Okay.
I never normally do it, so that you're already breaking the mode.
Okay. So should I do something that I believe was something that I know?
It's up to you. I'm easy either way. We play this game a lot.
I want to ask the same question about basketball because
okay.
So change my mind.
That what?
That basketball is the greatest game.
Okay. Well, basketball is a great game, no doubt. But there's a lot of sports out there that we don't even know about. And these sports equally utilize team camaraderie, are intense, very fun to watch. One of the major issues with basketball is one player can dominate. We've seen it with LeBron James. These people have transcended the sport. We've seen it with people like Michael Jordan even, or Kobe. These are giants of the sport. But there are other sports that don't allow that to happen because you need everyone to participate, like American football. In American football, no matter how great you are only as good as your team. No one player can ascend. So for that reason, it couldn't be the greatest because people. I mean, if I ask you, give me 5 different American football players that are bigger than their team, you couldn't say anything. Whereas in basketball, you can say it, and that's one of the reasons I think you couldn't describe it as the greatest team sport because, unfortunately, there are people who are better than the sport.
You try it, like it was good. It was a good approach. But
You're unconvinced.
It was a nice approach.
I think you're just being spiteful.
Maybe a little bit.
That's my view. But you know what? This is what we're trying to do, folks, is have us all thinking outside the box. In fact, let us know, did Torrin change your mind? Or did I, in my random attempt, also change yours? Let us know. And like I said, LTCS Podcast is the Instagram account and the Twitter account. Interact with us. Let us know what you think. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it made you think, kindly share it with somebody who you like, and let's get a discussion going. The truth is, we're going to need to keep on having these discussions if we want to see any type of systemic change. So thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you back next week. Until then, have a wonderful week, and thank you for your time. Any last words, Torrin?
J. Cole's the most conscious rapper.